NASCAR teams have always cheated since the sport's inception. From illegal fuel additives to modified parts on the car, teams have always tried to stay ahead of their competition by manipulating the rules, leading to some pretty creative ideas just to try and gain an extra tenth on the other cars. In this video, I'll go over what I consider some of the most creative ways to cheat in NASCAR, and as always, if you enjoy, like and subscribe. 92% of my viewers aren't subscribed, so why not lower that number? Anyways, to the video. To start off this list, we go back to the 1970s for a nitrous oxide cheating controversy. As being one of the easiest ways to induce a quick rise in horsepower, it's no surprise that it's had a history in NASCAR. The way that nitrous works is it's made up of 2 parts nitrogen and 1 part oxygen, and when injected into an engine, it means that more oxygen is available during combustion. Due to you having more oxygen, you can also inject more fuel, allowing the engine to create more power. Through the 1970s, this was a growing problem in the Cup Series garage, as many teams would use tiny 1 to 2 pound bottles of it hidden somewhere in their car, with many of the teams being forced to run it just to make the race, with some saying you couldn't make a race without it. Darrell Waltrip would say later in his career in 2000 that he'd been running nitrous oxide with Donnie Allison, and everybody knew it was under the dash. Another driver who was known to have used it was Dale Earnhardt, who used a tiny nitrous bottle under his seat that he would press during qualifying to help him make his NASCAR debut at Charlotte in 1975. The trend would continue, as at one point most of the teams, from back markers all the way up to the championship threats, would be running nitrous every week. Reached its tip during qualifying for the 1976 Daytona 500, when the 28 car of AJ Foyt and the 88 of Darrell Waltrip came out and were a second faster than the practice laps they were putting down prior, with Foyt winning the pole at 187 miles per hour, and Waltrip qualifying on the outside front row with a lap time of 186 miles per hour. NASCAR would end up taking the top 2 cars in qualifying and re-inspect them for nearly 7 hours that day, before the technical director at the time, Bill Gazaway, would come out and state that both the Waltrip and Foyt Chevys were set up for use of fuel pressure assists, which are not allowed. This came after finding a bottle of nitrous oxide in Darrell Waltrip's car, when Bill France threatened to tear apart the car piece by piece with a saw until they found it, leading to Waltrip's crew chief Mario Rossi getting nervous that they might cut into something and blow themselves up, forcing him to reveal it was hidden in the chassis tube. The 2 teams would be fined $1,000 each, and their qualifying times would be disallowed, along with a third driver in Bruce Hill, who would also be caught using the nitrous. Hoss Ellington, the owner and crew chief of Foyt's car, stated, "Golly, I forgot about that. I put it in there 3 years ago at Trenton, and it's been in there ever since." While Waltrip would go on to state, "In Grand National racing, there are a lot of things you have to do to keep up with the competition. It's common knowledge that cheating in one form or another is part of it. If you don't cheat, you look like an idiot. If you do it and don't get caught, you look like a hero. If you do it and do get caught, you look like a dope. Put me in the category I belong." Next up is the most recent one in this video, being the Flexgate scandal. This discovery would famously come in NASCAR's Reddit in 2018, as following the spring Las Vegas race early in the season, a Reddit on the site would spot that the 4 car of Kevin Harvick had a flex in its rear windshield mid-race. Upon digging deeper, it was found that once the car reached top speed, the window flexed, but when under caution or simply parked, the window would go right back to normal, using something outside of the traditional aluminum for the brace, allowing it to flex when a lot of pressure is put down on it, or when up to speed, giving it the caved look you see, while being noticeable to the other drivers on the track.
You see that right rear of that forged glass? Is it bowed down?
Yep, kind of where the jack, between the orange jack screw and the black lining, it's bowed from the right side of the jack screw over.
Yeah, right by the K. When he's up to speed, I think pushes down about, I don't know, 2 inches, 3 inches.
So what did the team gain from doing all this? Well, due to the window flexing down, it would direct more airflow to the spoiler of the car, helping it go through the corners better with more stability and speed. Obviously, it would help the car's performance, as when it was all said and done at the end of 400 miles at Las Vegas, it was Kevin Harvick and his car parked in victory lane after a dominating performance on the race, sweeping both stages and leading the most laps, equaling up to a max point day. The car passed post-race inspection, but later in the week on Wednesday when NASCAR dropped the penalty report, it had the 4 team written all over it. Rodney Childress would state, "It's not something that we wanted to happen. You definitely don't want the back of the roof sharp. You want the back of the roof round, and you want that to be a smooth transition. I think that everybody thinks that it helps. I would suggest that it probably didn't help. However, NASCAR never felt this way, fining crew chief Rodney Childress $50,000 and suspending car chief Robert Smith 2 cup races for a violation with a brace. Along with that, NASCAR took away 20 driver and owner points from Harvick for the L1 infraction, while also taking away all of Harvick's 7 playoff points he earned at Las Vegas, 5 for his win and 2 for his stage wins. But just 4 days later it wouldn't matter, as the 4 team was right back in victory lane, this time with a legal car.
Off turn 4, Happy Harvick gets his 40th career win.
The last creative way to cheat takes us back to 1992, with Harry Gant this time. In the 1990s, NASCAR was entering a new era of the sport, leading to harder crackdowns on cheating and more rules for the teams. NASCAR would introduce a spoiler angle rule into the sport, and this would impact the Leo Jackson 33 team, as they went from running up front consistently at super speedways prior to scratching their heads for speed during testing for the 1992 Daytona 500. But crew chief Andy Petrie believed that if you could find a way to get the spoiler to lay lower while the car was on the track, and get it back up before getting checked in post-race, it could lead to more speed for the 33 by creating less downforce. Petrie and a man who worked for the team in Dean Jones would immediately get to work on a deck lid that could support this, eventually creating one, but failing to have a way to control the spoiler. That wasn't until when he was randomly using his street car one day, and noticed a machine that controlled shutting the trunk automatically when putting his groceries away. Petrie would take his car to the race shop immediately, and take the motor that controlled the trunk out of his street car, putting it straight into the car of the 33, which would end up being a perfect fit, leading to a spoiler that could now be adjusted by the driver. The spoiler worked by taking modified spoiler blades and putting them through pre-designed slots created by the team in the deck lid. A link would connect the spoiler to the machine that controlled it, and the team used silicone in the pattern of a welding mold to give it the appearance that it was welded in place, but really it was free to move whenever the driver pleased. The spoiler was controlled with an extra switch added to the radio box, next to the driver inside the cockpit. But team owner Leo Jackson wasn't a fan of cheating, so to convince him to let the car run, Petrie would tell him if he could find the piece that controlled it, they wouldn't run the car.
I mean, the key to cheating is you got to do it right. I mean, you got to really do the work. And so we spent hours and hours doing this and concealed it up in the hinged part, and all the stuff in the car. Everything's ready, put it on there, check. Okay, so Leo checks the angle, it's 45 or whatever the number was, and he goes in there, starts looking at switches, and he's raising the deck lid, and he's looking at this, and he's looking at that, and he's all over this thing. Cannot find it. He said, I don't think it's on this car. I reached in there at the radio box, and the spoiler goes, yeah.
Once the team was on the grid for qualifying, the next obstacle would be the newest director of the series, Gary Nelson, who was starting his first day on the job and did not want to let teams get away with cheating, hoping to crack down harder than ever. When the 33 got to the end of the line to go out for their run, Nelson immediately told them to knock down their spoiler a degree before they could go. Petrie obviously was nervous, as he began to start tugging and pushing down on the spoiler, but it wasn't budging because of the links. Yet after finally getting it to barely move, Nelson would let the 33 car onto the speedway.
And I was like, oh, phew. So he takes off, and at the end of pit road at Daytona, it's right close to the track. And I'm standing there with my stopwatch, going to clock Harry when he comes by. And, Gary's standing right there in front of me, checking the next guy's spoiler. I look at that car coming by, and I think, and I went, God.
Visually.
Oh, yeah.
It was flat.
Oh. And Gary didn't even look over there.
The deck lid and spoiler would do their job during the qualifying run, but there's no definitive evidence to show where he qualified, after the car's starting spot would be taken away after failing post-qualifying inspection, for the car being too low of all things. The deck lid wouldn't make it another lap around the speedway though, as the nervousness of being caught for an illegal spoiler during the entire speed weeks was too much for Petrie, who would end up just swapping back to the normal deck lid and finishing 12th in the 500. And that'll do it for this video. Let me know if you want me to make a part 2 of this, and comment below your favorite NASCAR cheating stories that I missed. Anyways, I'll see you guys for the next one.